Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Yoga podcast. I'm your host, Arundhati, and I'm sharing a very special episode today. It's our first interview with a dear friend of mine, Afrin Sopariwala. She was working at Google, eventually went on to become an activist, and is now a full time Ayurveda practitioner. And if you don't already know, yoga and Ayurveda are sister sciences. They often go together. And we've been talking about Ayurveda offline. Like for years, Afrin and I have connected about yoga and Ayurveda. In fact, we met in a yoga class many years ago. And today's conversation is specifically to understand the relationship between yoga and Ayurveda, how Ayurveda is different from modern day trendy self care, and when you should know you need Ayurveda in your life, and how do you get access to good quality Ayurvedic wisdom. When do you go to a practitioner? When do you need to go to a doctor? And we also highlight yoga teachers and how they can use Ayurveda to supplement not only their body, but also their mind and spirit. We talk about burnout, voice strain. We talk about things like a sore body, fatigue, lack of sleep, so many different things that yoga teachers go through, and how Ayurvedic wisdom can come to our rescue with simple easy things that we can do on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so it is a fun conversation. Afrin packed in so much into today's episode. It's definitely not the last time we'll be hearing from her, but I'll let you get straight to the episode, and I'll see you on the other side. Hi, my name is Arundhati, and you're listening to the Let's Talk Yoga podcast. I'm an ex Bollywood dancer turned yoga and wellness educator. I've built a six-figure business as an immigrant, woman of color yoga teacher with no business background, no handstands, pure instinct, and the free information found on Google. If you love doing yoga and you dream of teaching it someday, this podcast is for you. We go over everything from doing and teaching yoga to scaling a small business, living a modern yoga lifestyle, and so much more. You'll find interesting, fun, raw conversations along with some tips, tricks, strategies, and insights in this podcast. So grab your cup of chai and let's jump in. Hi, Afrin. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited that you're here. You're our first official guest. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Now, we've been friends for a really long time. We met, I think, about 6.5, almost 7 years ago in a yoga class. And we became instant friends, right? We were the two Indian people in class, and we just became friends. Now, I know your full story, but for everybody listening who doesn't know, can you tell us how you went from living in India, coming here and working for Google, and then you became an activist, and now you're an Ayurveda practitioner? So that's a big jump. So, can you tell us a little bit about your story of what took you from your corporate background into practicing Ayurveda today?
Yeah, sure. It sounds very dramatic, but that whole story is like a 10-year process. So maybe it's not, but I think there's some interesting elements in that story. And it really started with me when I got that job offer. Part of me didn't want to take, I didn't never wanted to be a corporate employee, right? That was not my envisioned journey for myself. But the offer to work at Google was too hard to resist. And so 4 years later, I found myself about to move to the US, working for Google, and not really happy at what I was doing. So, for places to work, for corporate places to work, there's no other place like Google. So, for me to realize that here I am working at one of the best companies in the world, and I still know in my heart that this is not what I was meant to do, but I didn't know what was my next step. So, in a way, life had to push me out of there. I found myself now living in the US in 2010. Actually, it was 2012 by the time I had finished 2 years of working for Google in the US. And I had been on a contract with them since I moved to the US. And that was ending, and I had to think about my next steps. I was also ending a relationship, and that was really, really hard. So I found myself really stressed out, starting to see signs of an ulcer, digestive issues, and kind of like a devastating heartbreak. And that's when I found myself on the yoga mat. And we met shortly after that, but I yoga saved me for sure at that time. I was doing yoga 5 days a week at the studio, and I would end up on the mat sometimes in tears, leave in tears, but in between there was a lot of healing happening both for my body and my heart. So I think the move from the corporate world was really a classic case of misalignment, that this is a great career, great income, amazing opportunity, incredible people, opportunity to travel, but still my heart wasn't in it. And it showed. It showed to the people around me, and it showed in my own joy and my spark every day. So, but still, it wasn't clear what I wanted to do next. And yoga was a rescue, in the sense that it reminded me of spirituality. It brought me back to asking questions. What is the purpose of life? What do I want to do? I think yoga tends to have that effect if you allow it to not just change your body and your health, but also reflecting on yourself. And through that health journey, I also discovered Ayurveda. I started to see an Ayurvedic doctor in Seattle because of my digestive issues. And that's when I fell in love with that science. And I could see the parallels between Ayurveda and yoga. To me, they are so similar. It's like the same thing, but Ayurveda answered some of those questions of things that I knew, but I didn't know why. Like things that we grew up around in India, like, oh, don't eat this in the summer because it's heating. So I knew that from, having grown up and my parents saying that and my grandma saying that, like those home remedies. And suddenly I was reading Ayurvedic textbooks, and it gave me the answers to why. And I was like, oh, wow, this is so much common sense. But I wanted to mention the activism piece, because that it's about when I quit the corporate world that I decided to take a couple months off, and I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And I came across some climate activists, and immediately I was very drawn to that, because both the yogic philosophy, Ayurvedic philosophy, it teaches us that microcosm concept, right? That you are a part of the universe. What's happening outside you is happening within you. And I really believe that in my core. So seeing the climate crisis, seeing injustice to animals, all of that was important to me. And so I was like, great, I have some time. Let me go see what these activists here are doing and talking about. And I was extremely lucky to come across people who opened my eyes to how these bigger systems like racism and patriarchy and colonialism and capitalism, toxic capitalism, consumerism, all of these things contribute to climate crisis and how they're all interconnected. So my activism was a big eye-opening phase. I spent about a year and a half really being involved in all kinds of ways, doing talks, organizing protests, almost getting arrested, civil disobedience.
Oh, wow.
And then it got to a point where I wasn't taking care of myself. And I had kind of stepped too far into what can be a lot of stress and strain and emotions and up and down of. I think for activists, if you don't focus on self care, it can really have a lot of damage to your mental, emotional, physical well being. And I was starting to see that. And at the same time, I wasn't making, I hadn't re thought about my career. So I knew that I had to sit down and think about, okay, how am I going to make a living? So I was doing odd jobs on the side, but I needed to reset. And that's when opportunities with Ayurveda came aboard. I had already been studying Ayurveda. I had done 2 years of certifications. I was an Ayurvedic practitioner. And as my activism was coming to that burnout point, I got an opportunity to work with a naturopathic doctor in Seattle and started to work at his clinic and also started to see clients on my own. And so that's a little bit of that journey.
That's a fascinating story. I mean, it's not easy for everyone to just quit a well paying job, especially I can speak for us Indians who are raised saying, you got to go to school, you have to get a degree, you have to settle down, you have to marry this really, what do I say, qualified guy, and then you get a job. We have those checkpoints that are handed down in society. I think you and I have kind of defied a few of those. But yeah, it is fascinating. And not everyone is bold enough to take these big steps. So I find it inspiring and intriguing, honestly, that big jump. But talking of Ayurveda, okay, can you tell us what is Ayurveda and why is Ayurveda related to yoga? Like it's often called the sister discipline, right? So, what is Ayurveda and how is it connected to yoga?
Yeah. So to answer that question about how they're connected, simple way to say it is that they come from the same source and their goal is the same. They work together. Both Ayurveda and yoga came from ancient scriptures from India, and they are both sciences that lead us to self discovery, self evolution, whatever you want to call it, enlightenment or self realization. They are both pathways to that. They have similar tools. They might be slightly different routes to that journey and that goal, but the philosophy is very similar. So I think they work really well together. So Ayurveda, the way I see it is Ayurveda is, it really translates as knowledge of life, wisdom of
Hmm.
life. It is a way of living in harmony with the nature around you and also knowing the nature within you. So your uniqueness, learning that, discovering that. Like you and me, we have many similar interests, but we are different.
Hmm.
My sister, for example, like she falls asleep very easily. And for me, I'm a very light sleeper, right? Like literally coming from the same parents, there's differences. And you'll notice that among families, among friends, there's differences. Some people can eat really spicy food and nothing happens to their stomachs, and some people will just like blow up and start sweating if they eat one jalapeno. So it's the same food, the same environment, but each of us reacts differently to things, and Ayurveda teaches us to know that. So that is more a simplistic way of seeing Ayurveda. It is a health system. It is the oldest continuously practiced medical system in the world. It's called the mother of all medicine and healing. And I think that a lot of the evolution, even of Western medicine, originated from some of the wisdom of Ayurveda spreading across the world. Did you know that the oldest recorded surgery was actually done thousands of years ago in India by an Ayurvedic physician, and he's known to be the father of surgery.
Oh, wow.
So, it's an ancient practice, but very well documented, maybe not as scientifically evidence proven as Western medicine, but we're starting to get organized so that we can show the world that, look, what we've been saying for centuries and thousands of years is true. And I think Western medicine is starting to connect these dots as well.
Fascinating. So, can I say Ayurveda is a lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very broad. Ayurveda is a lifestyle. It is a way of living in harmony. It is making the choices you make every day, right? Like knowing yourself and then choosing how to dance with your environment.
Got it.
That's a simple way of seeing Ayurveda day to day, but it is also a complex medical system. Like just like there's 8 branches to yoga, there's also 8 branches to Ayurveda. And these are more specializations. So there is internal medicine, there's pediatrics, there is ENT, there's surgery. So there's 8 specializations, and Ayurveda can be a full medical system treating complex diseases. So that is the scope of it, but it's also the choices you make every day and living in harmony with nature in a very simplistic way. So yes, it's a lifestyle and a medical system and so much more.
So nowadays, especially with social media and these online trends, the word self-care is really trendy and it's a buzzword. And there's hashtag self-care Sunday and stuff like that. So what's the difference between Ayurveda and self-care? So say for example, if I massage myself with oil after taking a shower, is that Ayurveda or is that just self care? I think I could give better examples, but that's the one that came to my
Oh,
mind right now.
I think when I was studying Ayurveda, my teacher would say Ayurveda is all encompassing. So actually, any activity you do that is for your health, for well being, can be considered Ayurveda. Ayurveda doesn't need to take credit that, oh, we are a science from India, we're so cool. But anything you do to take care of yourself falls into that wisdom of living in harmony with yourself. So yes, I think the most unique thing about Ayurveda though is that it is very individualized. So there are some instances when massaging your body and putting oil on your body is not appropriate, and for some cases when there's a lot of toxins in your system, for example, or maybe when you're menstruating, we'll say you don't want to be applying a lot of oil on your body. So that aspect of individualization, of knowing that this is correct for me right now in these circumstances, and these practices or this self-care is not appropriate for me, that discernment is Ayurveda. Or Ayurveda, helps you recognize those things. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And what you're essentially saying is that Ayurveda is not a one size fits all practice. And we say that with yoga too, that it's not a one size fits all. It's kind of become like that over the past few decades, but each person has a different constitution and they have to treat themselves accordingly. So I get what you're saying. I'm actually fascinated by how self-care and Ayurveda, they look so similar to an untrained eye, but they're very different. So yeah, that makes full sense.
Yeah, I think self-care with awareness is Ayurveda. Not just doing something because it's a fad, or not just doing something because it's cool, but really knowing, hey, this is going to help me. Or even experimenting, like seeing, how does oil pulling feel for me? Do I notice a change in my oral hygiene, and also maybe in my digestive health? I was reading a textbook. I mean, oil pulling is a fad right now, so I'm giving it as an example. It's trendy, and I think for good reason, but there's also spiritual benefits to that. In fact, they say that it helps clear your Manipura chakra, which is your solar plexus. It helps, strengthen and clear and detox all the way into the gut. So I love that Ayurveda is also so subtle. It's a very spiritual science, even though right now it's mostly known as, oh, home remedies and herbs and massage. There's a huge spiritual aspect to Ayurveda as well. And I think that's what makes it so long lasting and enduring.
Wonderful. Now, I have to ask you this. What are some common misconceptions about Ayurveda?
Yes. So, a few things is that similar to yoga, actually, that, oh, Ayurveda is only for vegetarians, or Ayurveda is a religious science, those things that they say even about yoga, right? Like some people will think that yoga is a practice that comes from the Hindu religion, or Ayurveda is very strict, and there's no room for flexibility, or there's no room for pizza in Ayurveda, which is not true. I think it's so broad, like I was saying. So I think that people, because it's so broad, people see a glimpse of it and they believe that that's what it is, right? So they see these home remedies and they think, oh, Ayurveda is about, oh, home remedies, or, oh, Ayurveda is about panchakarma, which is this complete system of detox. And a lot of people from the US and the West go to India and receive panchakarma, which is a real treat. It's sometimes a month-long process, and you're pampered and receive, four people massaging you and all these like rose treatments. So they think Ayurveda is panchakarma, but there's so much more to Ayurveda. And I think those are the misconceptions, that they see a piece of it and they believe that's what it is, but it's so much broader. And yeah, it's not a religious science, definitely not. It's not only for vegetarians. It whatever is good for your body, eat that. There are times when they say bone broth is medicine and they want you to eat it. Or even meat is used in some treatments when there's severe depletion. So Ayurveda doesn't say that you have to do X and Y. It's what is right for you right now.
I had no idea that people thought that you have to be vegetarian to do Ayurveda. I've heard that in yoga. It just, I can see the parallel comparison. You have to be vegetarian. And a lot of people think that just because, you and I were born in India, they think everybody is vegetarian. And that's actually not true. But without getting stuck there, I'm going to move on to the next one. Now, to somebody who's just learning about Ayurveda, how do we get access to it? So how do we read a blog? Do we watch a YouTube video? Do we look for an Ayurvedic doctor? So where does one get access to Ayurvedic wisdom?
Yeah, great question. And I think all of those are really good avenues. I would say, if you can find a doctor and do a consultation, to really, that is the best way to kind of begin that process of self discovery. It really becomes hands on, because then you kind of invest yourself into taking action. And that is a great journey to embark on, because my partner Ram is an Ayurvedic doctor, and I see him. A consultation with him is usually 90 minutes to 2 hours. And often people will leave the room with a list of homework. They've been taught to do a breathing practice. They've been told what to eat. They get all of these changes to make to their lifestyle. So they leave with a big, with a list of things that they're willing to try. And often they come back and they're like, "Oh, I did this and I noticed this." So that is a really good way to get hands on. But I think there's so many resources. There is YouTube videos. There is, I think, starting with an introductory book by either Dr. Basant Lad or Dr. Robert Svoboda, and we can put some links in the show notes. Fantastic introductory books, and even further in depth, they have written many, many books on Ayurveda, on Ayurveda and yoga, for example, or just knowing your constitution. So there's many resources. I do think that getting a consultation is a really good way to begin that journey for yourself. But whatever works for you, reading, watching videos, podcasts.
I also think, we live in this information age where everything is accessible at our fingertips. And I say this to my students who do teacher training in yoga, that you can't trust every blog post written about yoga. You have no idea who's writing it, and you want to really go to a credible source for your information, because honestly there's so much out there. So I think going to read those one of those books is a great idea. I've read Dr. Vasant Lad's Ayurveda Introduction to Ayurveda book, and we'll definitely link those. But I think it's a good call out to just tell people, go to a credible source. Not everybody who talks about Ayurveda is the absolute source. Does that make sense?
Yes, I agree. I agree. Looking for an authentic source, someone who can be a mentor to you, you're 100% correct. Because I do see on Instagram some people who will, use the hashtag Ayurveda, and they're just speaking, kind of like almost superstitious nonsense. And it's just irritating to see that the kinds of
Oh
things
gosh, tell me about it.
things being passed off as Ayurvedic wisdom are just kind of clickbaity, like, oh, you want to get likes and followers and clicks, and you're just going to say something that looks interesting but is not essentially true, or is not something that will work for everybody, and can even be dangerous if tried by the wrong person.
So true. So true. Now, you just mentioned your partner Ram being an Ayurveda doctor, and you're more of a counselor. Can you, or that's what I'm saying. Can you give us the difference between an Ayurvedic doctor and an Ayurvedic practitioner or counselor? And feel free to correct me on those terms. And when do I go to, say, you, and when do I go to Ram?
Yes, great question. Ayurveda is a licensed medicine in India. And so to become an Ayurvedic doctor, you kind of go through a very rigorous education, which is not available in the US or I don't think anywhere else at this point, only in India, right? So it's a degree. It's a bachelor's degree in Ayurvedic medicine and surgery. And that's a 5.5 to 6 year long process where you spend 5 years in school, you do 1 year of residency, just like a traditional doctor, and you learn about an Ayurvedic degree, medical degree in India also includes understanding Western medicine. So you learn to read blood reports and you learn to recognize Western medicine and even prescribe medicine as needed. So that is an education that is very different than what I did, which was to be an Ayurvedic practitioner. And, in the US, the education is starting to grow and get structured and formalized. So I know that there are schools that are now offering a 3 year a program that gives you the title of being Ayurvedic doctor. And I'm not sure how it compares, but I hope that it gets to a point of being really robust and authentic. But at this point, I would say there is definitely between the education I received and the education that Ram has received, it's like basically a certification versus a degree, right? It is like somebody who, yeah, did 2 years of education, which I did, and 6.5, 5, 6 years of education, including surgery, including being in hospitals, including, observing, patients who are coming in with really chronic issues. So I would say if you have serious health issues, if you really want to address any kind of disease or serious health imbalance related concerns, you want to find an Ayurvedic doctor. But if you're looking for lifestyle recommendations, if you want to learn the self care and if you want to do prevention, then an Ayurvedic practitioner can be a really good mentor who guides you towards these practices and kind of coaches you into applying them. In fact, even doing a consultation with a doctor, receiving that list of things you need to apply into your life, and then working with a practitioner over the next few months to apply those things can be a route. But if there is health issues, health concerns, disease related, you definitely want to go to a BAMS is the degree, an Ayurvedic doctor. And in the US, that license is not recognized. So technically, he's not a medical doctor in the US. And we have to be clear when we communicate with our clients that we're not necessarily treating a disease and we're not necessarily diagnosing a condition, but it falls under the purview of alternative medicine. And as long as people are aware that you have to be under the care of your primary care physician, and if you want to use Ayurveda in conjunction, we can help with balancing side effects of really complex diseases. We have Ramses cancer patients who are doing chemotherapy, and Ayurveda can work really well to minimize some of those side effects of those, more severe medical issues. We also many chronic issues like diabetes, which Western medicine will just say, hey, you're going to have to take this pill for the rest of your life, or even heart disease. Both of those are the main killers of people in this country, in the Western way of living. And Ayurveda can do so much through changes in lifestyle and diet to address those issues, which otherwise you're stuck taking a pill for the rest of your life. So, yeah, so if you have health issues, you want to go see an Ayurvedic doctor. But someone like me, a practitioner, can be, a mentor and a coach to make changes and adjustments in your lifestyle and things like that.
That gives me so much clarity because I've always wondered, should I go to a practitioner or should I go to a doctor? And for me, because I have access to both of you, I haven't thought twice, right? But that's really helpful. Now, let's switch gears a little bit. I want to take the conversation more towards yoga teachers and how Ayurveda can help yoga teachers. In the past, you and Ram have been very helpful in terms of getting me to deal with burnout, digestive issues, lots of fatigue. Running two businesses was a little too much, and depending on what season I was in, it would get really overwhelming. I think the first time I realized I had adrenaline, I can never say that word, adrenaline fatigue, was when you explained it to me. So so it's really helped me, and everything you and Ram have told me has mostly worked for me. And I've done the work too. Like if you tell me swallow this, apply this, do this, I geek out on those kind of things. I'll do it. But for yoga teachers, so yoga teachers have a couple of issues. Things like voice strain. You've seen me lose my voice several times in like the last year, right? We have fatigue. For studio business owners like me, we stay at the studio for really long hours. Not now because of the pandemic, but pre pandemic. We'd be in the studio several days a week, early mornings, late nights. So I was wondering if you could just give us a few Ayurvedic remedies, or not even remedies, but suggestions as to how yoga teachers can combat a few things. So, what if we start with voice strain? Okay, because we use our voice so much, and depending on, some yoga teachers teach a few classes, some teach a lot. And for me personally, when I teach yoga teacher trainings, I'm speaking at full volume from like 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., with like a 45-minute lunch break. And even in my mini tea breaks, I have students who come up to me and they engage me in conversation. So I overuse my voice. So is there anything other than, say, drinking warm water that you would suggest?
Yes. So for anything voice strain related, there is an herb called licorice, which has to be your best friend. So licorice, the Sanskrit word is yashti madhu, and it means sweet root or sweet stem. And that sweetness actually denotes to giving you a sweet voice. It's a herb that is very lubricating and nourishing to the mucous membrane, and has an affinity to your throat and your voice. So in India, they say that anybody who's a singer or classical musician who sings needs to be best friends with Yashti Madhu. So it's accessible. You definitely will find licorice tea in your health food store, but I would also say maybe get a good quality licorice powder or the licorice root and drink that as a tea every day. Especially on days when you're going to be speaking a lot, start your day with that. Keep it with you during the day, and then just keep drinking that licorice throughout the day. You can also do gargling with a little bit of licorice and salt with hot water to help that herb reach your throat and clear out any roughness and soreness, and soothing, giving a little bit of that soothing quality. So that's the best remedy for voice training, is using licorice as a tea in your gargling. And then also practices like maybe oil pulling, even though that may not immediately give you an effect, but over time doing it regularly will just strengthen and soothe and lubricate your mouth and your throat and help with that voice strain aspect. What have you done that has helped you from all the things we've suggested?
So, personally, Afrin, I have only been hydrating, drinking a lot of warm water during long days of teacher training, a lot of ginger chai. You know, I love my cup of chai. So, those are the main things. I actually have never tried licorice root tea. As in, I've had it, I haven't had it during teacher training. And now, since my teacher training season is starting in September, I can't wait to try this. And it's something I'd recommend to my trainees as well. But for the listeners who don't know what is oil pulling, can you quickly elaborate on that?
Yes. So, oil pulling is just a simple practice of, I like to do this in the morning, even before I brush my teeth, taking a teaspoon up to 2 teaspoons of coconut oil, virgin coconut oil, and you can just scoop it. It'll just melt in your mouth, so you don't have to melt it beforehand. And then swish it in your mouth. Start with 5 minutes, go up to 15 minutes. The longer you do, the better. What the oil is going to do is it's interacting with the mucous membrane in your mouth. The mucous membrane in your mouth is the most absorbent, right? So the oil is going to pull out toxins, pull out bacteria. So it's good for oral health. It's good for you're actually also massaging and working out the muscles in your mouth and your jaw. So it's good overall for gum health. It'll change your face too. It's like working out your facial muscles, and you're going to notice it do a deeper detox as well. So it's a, yeah. And then what you want to do is swish it for 5 to 7 minutes, going up to 10 or 15, and then you want to spit it out. I like to do it into my compost bin. You don't really want to, definitely don't swallow it. You want to spit it into a garbage bin. Some people do it in the toilet, but I just find that it makes the toilet bowl sticky. So, garbage is the easiest way to finish that process. And then brush your teeth and carry on.
I've never tried oil pulling. I know you've spoken about it a few times with me. It's something I've never tried. Probably I will try it this summer. I don't know why I haven't tried it. It's just one of those things I need to get to. Let's move to talking about a fatigue in particular. Yoga teachers or even business owners like me, right? We end up working long hours, crazy hours. Sometimes I've been in the office from 9 a.m. all the way up to 6 p.m., and then I go straight into classes, and I'm there till like 10:30 p.m. sometimes, depending on the day. We're recording this during COVID closures, so it's different. But do you have any Ayurvedic wisdom for just being tired or fatigue for yoga teachers?
Yes. So, what I know is that sometimes even dehydration plays a huge role in creating that feeling of fatigue. So that's one thing that I know that yoga teachers who are speaking, moving so much in class, they are not hydrating enough. And you might think that you're drinking enough water. You might think, oh, I'm getting 8 glasses of water a day. But if your digestion isn't strong, sometimes that water is just going through your system and you're not reaching your deeper cells and hydrating. So, to overcome that, to really get rehydration, what you want to do is, in addition to drinking, a glass of water a few times every hour or so, you want to sip hot water, warm to hot water every 10 to 15 minutes, especially on days when you're just going long days, long hours. So that's one thing. I know people don't want to hear about hydration, but I think we need to keep reminding folks to do that. The other thing is keeping a regular routine for your meals. And I know that that can be a struggle because your classes are erratic, but if you can just try to get your lunch and dinner eating on time, making sure you're not starving, not getting to the point of so much hunger. If you can rotate your schedule to the point where eating becomes fits in with your work, that's going to make a difference in your energy levels. And of course, if there's a day when you're just like, I don't know what's happening, take a shot of electrolytes. You now get these healthier versions of electrolytes. You just pour some in a glass of water, drink that. That's going to immediately make you feel better. But usually there's something deeper going on. It's your metabolism, your hormones. Maybe there's a little bit of adrenal fatigue, which we'll talk about when we speak about burnout. But I would just say you'll be surprised by how much just hydrating and the hot sips, just thinking about the sips of warm water every 15 to 20 minutes, that's going to make such a difference.
I can agree with that. I used to feel so dehydrated during teacher training. We This was last year when I was doing the 300 hour, and we used to be in studios from like 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., and I would be talking all the time on my feet, and I could feel like my skin would get dry. I would feel like my face was getting, I would actually, during the breaks, go and moisturize myself because that's how dry my lips got, my face got. So I started drinking water, but more than water, I did electrolytes in between because I was feeling so drained. And as you were talking about it, I'm now thinking back and realizing that it was the dehydration that would exhaust me, not so much the teaching itself, because I'm used to that. But there was something in the air, I think. it was winter, it was cold, the air was very dry, and that added to it. So I started taking a humidifier to the studio, and that helped me too. So it was a combination of things, the humidifier and the electrolytes and warm water hydration, that made such a difference. My brain felt like it could focus more.
Isn't it bizarre? It's so simple. And we are looking for, like, I want a pill and I want,
Yeah, because
a
for me,
complicated routine. Yeah.
totally. And I think a lot of people don't do it because it is so simple, but it is so valuable. And if I left myself dehydrated, I would go into migraines at the end of training, and that was just miserable. So the humidifier, the warm water, the electrolytes, even coconut water was very helpful for me. So I'm glad you brought that up. The next thing that I've noticed with yoga teachers, probably more business owners who end up staying in the studio later into the nights, we end up having disrupted sleep cycles, because the typical studios are open till, or were open till, about 8:30 p.m., 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m. It depends on where you're located and how your classes are structured and how much you clean the studio, stuff like that. So my studios, I typically work in the evenings when it comes to teaching, evenings into the night. And the dance studios, would be open till like 10:30, 11 p.m. The yoga studio would close at around 9:30, 9:45. So I've always had late nights. And then it comes down to coming home and literally getting yourself into bed and trying to wind down. So do you have anything that you could share in terms of how to how to wind down well and nurture that sleep cycle, and why that is so important?
Yeah. You're not going to like this answer because I'm going to say that making sleeping early a priority has to be part of your long-term health plan. Now, maybe in the first few years of running a studio, I totally understand. There's We all have phases in life when we have no control over our sleep, whether it's a night shift or, first couple years with the baby. But as soon as it's feasible for you to say, like, okay, now I'm taking control of my routine. And the first thing you want to choose in taking control is being in bed by 10:30 at the latest. And there's a reason for that, because your body's clock, your internal clock, it awakens right around 10 to 2 o'clock is when your body is doing an internal digestion. So it's your pitta is, so this is one of the three doshas for people who are not familiar with Ayurvedic concepts, but this is your metabolic energy that's coming in at 2 o'clock and has process to do. So you want to be asleep by then. But okay, let's talk about when that's not an option. So I just wanted to plant that seed for making that a priority when possible. In the meantime, what there's a few things we can do. So one thing that works really well is a foot massage. So, say you've come home, you're tired, you've had dinner, and now you need to be up a little while before you can sleep, because you've just eaten. So, use that time to create that wind down effect. Put the screens away. We don't want to be in front of a screen that's stimulating and waking up your optic nerves again with those bright lights, or use a blue blocker. But ideally, you're spending time away from the screen and you're doing something grounding. Warm up some oil, and if you can get a nice body massage oil with some lavender or just plain sesame oil, and rub it into the soles of your feet and massage until it's fully absorbed. So that's going to relax all the nerves in the body which end in the feet, and give them a signal that, okay, it's time to relax. And that's going to begin that process of falling asleep. So that's one quick thing. You can also do a little bit of a scalp massage with some oil. Again, it's going to be very grounding. So these things are going to help on that immediate effect of sleeping. You can also try a golden milk. It works for some people, it doesn't, but just a warm nut milk with some turmeric, maybe some dates. If you're into Ayurvedic herbs, some ashwagandha, that's going to again help with sleep. And then I want to talk about Abhyanga. So Abhyanga is a process of applying oil on the whole body. You don't have to do this at night, but if you can build a practice of massaging the body with oil at least a few times a week, you're going to notice it affect all of these things that we talked about. It's going to impact the fatigue, it's going to impact how you sleep, it's going to help with any aches and pains and stiffness in the body, which we can talk about. So that practice of abhyanga is going to help ground the body and give it a sense of love and comfort.
These are great options, especially the foot massage one. The first time I got a foot massage, I was still living in India, and I've got foot massages only in the past decade. And the first time I got a foot massage, this was in my dance days when I was dancing, like I was a Bollywood dancer professionally. We used to dance bare feet and in heels. And depending on the venue, we didn't always get to teach classes in a yoga studio, in a dance studio like we do out here. So we used to be on marble and stone and tile and maybe a hardwood floor. So our feet would take a beating. And the first time I got a foot massage, I was asleep in the car. I was not driving, but I was asleep in the car. I was out. And because my feet were so tired from all the dancing for years, I can totally relate to the foot massage and the other stuff, but I'm a little partial to the foot massage. So that's great. Now, would that help with yoga teachers who feel a little stiff and sore? Because sometimes in classes, right, when we are in a live class, we end up demonstrating a pose on one side, and then we don't necessarily do it on the other side because we're teaching, we're engaging the class, and sometimes that can leave us a little stiff and sore. Do you have anything? Would abhyanga work, or would the foot massage, is it the same, or do we have to do something different?
So, yes, so even the hydration is going to help that, right? If you're dehydrated, there's tightness, there's stiffness, the massage 100% is going to help. Because everybody, even if you're not so physically active, the massage in a way ends up being like a workout because you are tapping, squeezing, rubbing your whole body, right? You're nourishing it with oil. The beautiful thing about this oil is it penetrates the skin and nourishes the joints, the nerves, the muscles, the tendons. So it's giving them food and nourishment and love in a different way. And we don't know how much our bodies need that, right? You just try an oil massage and your body will just soak it up. It's so interesting. At our clinic, we sometimes use like 8 ounces of oil during one single massage session. And we don't have a shower. So people, they're just like lightly wiping themselves and they're like, my body drank all of that oil. Yeah. So the abhyanga will help, hydration will help, and then maybe Epsom salt baths with the magnesium in that is going to soothe the muscles, putting on some essential oils in there. But I think just the hydration and abhyanga, to keep it simple, is going to have an effect on that stiffness and soreness. And then of course, making sure that you are balancing out your body. If you know that in class you worked, maybe do two poses on the right side, and then the next time you're showing a pose, do it on the left side. So in your own head, you're like trying to balance it out. I'm sure you have all those techniques and ideas in place already.
No, but it's always a good reminder. There are times in class where I have actually been like, and now let's bend this knee when I'm demonstrating. And I'm like, wait, I'm going to do it on the other side. So, no, that's a good reminder. But let's talk about the one of the biggest issues yoga teachers and studio owners face, especially now during the COVID closures. And there are so many studios across the country just shutting down. Like every day on these forums, we hear of studios closing down, yoga teachers hitting burnout. Burnout is a pretty common thing in the yoga teacher space, but now it's gotten a lot more because it is so hard to keep paying your rent, not being in your studio, trying to teach with like 5 people in class and stuff like that. So do you have anything that will help burnout? I know you and I have had these conversations over the years for me when I've hit burnout, but do you have anything to address in terms of Ayurveda for burnout in general?
Yeah, I mean, when you reach the stage of burnout, you know that it's kind of like a process, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It's the result of many days of pushing yourself beyond. And, it's very common because today's world, that's the only way for many of us to get started on what we're trying to achieve. But so the first homework is to really train yourself to stop and recharge, putting in those daily self-care practices. I think the opposite of burnout has to be taking self-care, like addressing intentional self-care. And by self-care, I don't mean going to the spa once a month, right? That's like indulgent self-care, which we all need and deserve. But the daily self-care of saying that, okay, I'm done for the day and this thing can wait till tomorrow, or this reply can wait, or this Instagram post can wait until tomorrow. So that stop. And after that stop, you are doing things to recharge yourself, whether it's going for a walk in silence, whether it is taking that bath or doing that self massage. Another thing that Ayurveda is has a beautiful tool to offer is connecting with your five senses, and that becomes a form of self-care, again with intention. So you're thinking about, okay, my eyes, today I'm focused on taking care of my eyes, so what can I do? Maybe I'm going to put some cucumber slices and just close my eyes and lay down for 5 minutes, and you can do that in the middle of the day. That becomes your 5 minute self-care break. And then if you have to get up and get back on the computer or get back in a class, you do that. But just that 5 minutes of taking care of your eyes and laying down is going to have a difference. So in Ayurveda, we have techniques for all five senses, and we say that one of the strongest medicines of Ayurveda is five sense therapy. And so the eyes, we have different eye care techniques, whether it's, maybe candle gazing or exercises, but also applying oils and ghees and eye drops into the eyes. But the cucumber thing is going to work if you're doing ghee and stuff in your eyes, you want to do that under guidance of a practitioner. But cucumber, you can cut a slice and do that right away. For the nose as well, I know yoga teaches about neti. So doing a regular neti practice, again, it's not just for your respiratory health. It's going to calm the nervous system and the mind. We have another technique in Ayurveda called Nasya, where we use medicated oil and we put it in the nose. And, again, that's very grounding, very nourishing, not just to the sinuses, but to the mind and the brain, because we say the nose is the gateway to the brain. And then the oil pulling for your mouth and tongue, but also thinking about, okay, can I be in silence for a few hours? I'm not going to say anything. I have a yoga class coming up today, so I'm going to intentionally be in silence for a little while. But oil pulling, again, is another thing that we talked about. Skin, your fifth sense is abhyanga, so applying oil on the whole body, massaging, nourishing the skin. And the ears. So for the ears, again, we don't really think about, do my ears need any care? When was the last time you thought about taking care
Yeah,
of your
so true.
ears, right?
So true. Yeah.
But our senses are our ways of, they are only way of interacting with the external, right? Our whole interface to the outside world is through the five senses. And so when we take care of them, we are taking care of ourselves in a very intentional way.
There is so much we can unpack there. I feel like that you just
I know.
gave us so much. That's fantastic. I love the fact that you said the opposite of burnout should be intentional self care. That's really valuable because nowadays, right, with social media and Instagram and trends, self care has somehow become, or the Western approach to self care has is external. So buy a jade roller, buy something else, put this external thing, go to the spa. But those are all momentary external things. So I think what you said is so valuable. Internal self care is will rejuvenate you so much more, deeper and faster than just external self care. and addressing the five senses. That is really awesome. I did not know the nose was considered the gateway to the brain. It makes full sense now when I think of pranayama and jalneti itself as a kriya, but that was really interesting for me. So thank you.
Yeah.
Those are great.
But one more thing I want to say about the burnouts is, so these are simple self care things to do, but Ayurveda has so much to offer when there's like a severe depletion of the adrenals, which are typically, your adrenals are your glands that produce your stress hormones, right? So
Mhm.
when we are in the stage of go, 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 we're just rushing through the day, rushing through our jobs and our work, life is stressful, that's going to be your gland and your hormonal system that's going to take a hit. And if we don't address it at that early stage, when you're experiencing this fatigue, it's going to go further and maybe impact your thyroid, or it's going to go further and impact your reproductive organs. So you want to do that rejuvenation, and it's called giving your glands a tonic. So you want to use adaptogens, and you want to address that as early as possible. And I think working with a practitioner to just have that guidance on, hey, this happens to me every few months, what do I do? And even if it's a simple regimen that you get on with either some herbs or some specific diet for a few months, that's going to help you just build that resilience in your system.
So true. I know you and I have spoken about adrenaline fatigue in the past, and you really helped me with herbs and a couple of pills and some other lifestyle shifts. And that helped me. I haven't gone back to that because it's been helping me, as in, I haven't reached that burnout phase in the past year and more. So that's good. So there's so much here, Afrin, that you've given us. I'm pretty sure you will be back here on the podcast and we'll be talking about Ayurveda again. But as we head into summer, and because of COVID closures, a lot of yoga studios are trying to do yoga outside. And it is hard unless you live in Seattle. Like if you look outside today, it's far from summer. But what do you think of doing yoga outside under the sun in the heat? I know that it can be more intense depending on where you're living, but what if my pitta is higher? Like there's a lot of heat within me. Should I be outside in the sun? What do you have to say?
I would say please try and do your yoga outside in the mornings and in the later evenings, right? You don't want to be out in the direct sun for an hour, hour and a half in that noon to 4 o'clock time. Even I think starting 11:30. It depends on where you live, but that peak time of the day, I think, is, stay at home, eat your big meal, and do your work, but do your yoga in the mornings and evenings. I love the idea of doing yoga outside. It's so nourishing and grounding. If you can even do some poses barefoot on the earth, it's just going to be so nice for the system to connect with the earth in that way. But if you're going to be out in the sun and sweating, I think that's going to have more of a depleting effect on the system. And you won't really get the benefits of yoga because your body is just going to be drained out. So make sure you wear a big hat if you're out in the heat of the day, whenever it is. Summer, the sun is depleting. It gives life, but it takes energy out of us to be in that direct sunlight. So you want to be nourishing with cool, again, so you'll have to stay extra hydrated. You have to add in some cooling diet, like, yeah, as you said, drinking coconut water is fantastic. Making a cucumber juice or a classic Ayurvedic cooling tea is boiling some just plain coriander seeds in water, or steeping that in hot water for 5 minutes and sipping that through the day. You're going to really experience a cooling of the digestive system, but the whole body. And aloe vera gel is another summer tonic that is has so many benefits, but is also has that cooling effect. So those are just some quick tricks to stay cool in the summer. And yeah, just stay in the shade in the middle of the day and do your yoga in the mornings and evenings.
Wonderful. Does it make, just an add on question to that, does it make a difference if I know I'm going to be teaching yoga or doing yoga this evening and the sun is setting and I'm hydrating extra during the day? Will that make a difference, or should I just be hydrating post yoga outside?
Oh, both. Both. If your body's already well hydrated, you're going to go through that hour in the class with more ease and grace. And then, after the class, you want to recuperate. So just think about rehydrating your system as your everyday practice, not just on days when you're teaching, but just make it a part of who you are.
Perfect. That's great, Afrin. Thank you so much for all this wisdom that you've dropped. I know for sure that you will be back and we'll be talking about a lot more Ayurveda and yoga related topics. But if our listeners want to reach out to you, they want to consult and get some Ayurveda going in their own lives, where can they reach you?
Yeah, so find me at liveayurvedic.com. That's my offering more like digital courses and soon to be podcast on which you will also be coming, I'm sure, very soon.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. So Live Ayurvedic is my platform online, and my partner and I have a clinic here in Orange County. So if there's if you need more in-depth Ayurvedic wisdom, especially if you want to address health issues, then you want to come do a consultation with my partner. I'm also part of the team, so we work together, and that practice is called the Healing Gardens of Ayurveda. And we are doing a lot of consultations online over Zoom, so wherever you are, we can support you on your health journeys. Yeah, so find us on the Healing Gardens of Ayurveda and Live Ayurvedic.
Wonderful. And I'll pop these into the show notes so people can find them easily. Okay. Thank you
Yes.
so much, Afrin. It was great
Thank
talking to
you.
you, and I'm
Always
sure you'll be
fun.
back soon.
Okay. Talk soon. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. There was so much that Afrin packed into it. I'll be back next week with another topic. Until then, remember you can find us on Instagram at the Let's Talk Yoga podcast or Arundhati Bait Mangalkar. If you enjoyed this show, please feel free to rate, review, and like wherever you're listening to this. Until next week, take care. Bye bye.